Come with me to a time before time, a world of brightly armored heroes, elemental powers, and forces of great darkness risking to swallow up whole islands. All this from a Danish toy company.
That are alive, you're coming with me.
ZX Spectrum Commodore 128 and 64. I hit the floor, I hit the shore. Got gaming skills from days of yore. I close the dead computer rolls, play until my...
Welcome to Beef Snake Nerdcast. I'm the chronicler, Bolter. Bionicle is a toy line. No, a story that is near and dear to me. If I'm being honest, it's what motivated me to learn to read. So, I want to share a little bit about it. Starting with the power of gravity. Keep in mind, I choose my topics at random, and probability thinks it's funny, apparently. Allow me to add a little bit of context. Almost everything in the Bionicle universe is biomechanical, and a lot of that is inherently connected to the fundamental forces of nature, an element. The big ones were obvious: fire, water, air, etc. But there were several lesser elements that were around, but just seen as a little bit less often. One of them was gravity. Now, understandably, this power is really frickin' strong. From the few times we see it in the story, it makes sense why it wasn't a spotlight power. Elements in the Bionicle universe are also tied to specific life forms. Gravity was found within 4 of these life forms: the human stand-ins, the Matoran, the purely mechanical Bohrok, the villainous species Makuta, and the kinda second-stringer villain species, the Skakdi. If that was gibberish for you, don't worry, I'm about to break it down. All elements in the Bionicle universe have 2 identifiers. The first is color. This was a toy line after all, and not just any toy line either. Half the appeal of LEGO is rebuilding and creating new things. Gravity was color-coded, with the primary color of purple and the secondary color of black. Pretty good color scheme, and it's a pretty good fit. The second identifier was a suffix. Every element had a 2 or 3 letter suffix that was used as kind of a shorthand to tell them apart. Fire, for example, was Ta, so a Matoran of fire would be a Ta Matoran. Gravity was given the suffix of Ba, B-A. So, you wouldn't call it a gravity Matoran, you'd call it a Ba Matoran. Speaking of Matoran, what is a Matoran? A Matoran is the closest comparable life form to a human in Bionicle, so kind of the protagonists. Matoran are short, sturdy, working everyman, or women, and Ba Matoran, like all Matoran, only carry a fraction of innate elemental powers, so a Ba Matoran only has a little bit of gravity power in them. This manifests as a passive resistance to high pressures. They're a little harder to crush. They're not supposed to be fantastic, but every story needs a hero, and there's a few rare Matoran out there that get to become Toa, the legendary heroes of the setting, getting to tap into their element for real. Toas of gravity are hugely powerful, even compared to other Toa. Toas of any element are able to create, control, manipulate, and absorb their particular element. Gravity Toa can create, control, and manipulate a fundamental force of the universe. They control mass. That's wild. For an example of what that would look like, just play an adept in any of the Mass Effect games. That's what the biotic powers are. That'll give you a good idea of what these guys are capable of. So it's easy to settle fights and protect people when you can just huck people into orbit when they disagree with you. But Toa are supposed to be heroes. That's their purpose. Thanks to the Great Spirit, Toas have a no-kill code of conduct. So they'll probably just huck you into a wall or pin you to the floor until you agree to start behaving. However, Toas are not infallible. They have a finite amount of elemental power, and they will run out eventually. Basically, they'll need a power nap to recharge that elemental juice, but it keeps them from being absolutely busted. Interesting side note is, as I mentioned, most Toa can absorb the element they're correspondent with, so hitting a fire Toa with a fire attack is just not going to work. That's not true for gravity Toas, because if they try to absorb the element that they have, it turns them into a singularity, a miniature black hole. That kills them. And the Matoran in the area they're supposed to be protecting. And the island they're standing on. You get the idea. This means that throwing gravity attacks at a gravity Toa will actually get them slammed. So they've got to consider that while going into a fight. Finally, when a Toa has fulfilled their duty and wishes to retire, they turn into a wise but diminutive Turaga, kind of the elders of the society. They're there to use their experience to guide the Matoran and keep the Toa kind of on the right path. This means that they lose a lot of that Toa elemental mojo doing this. They're not really able to manifest it at all. It's seen as a great honor because it is a sacrifice and it's for the good of the people, but it's a Toa gone. That's a hero that is no longer able to fight for the good of the people. Not directly, anyway. On to the less savory users of this power. We have the Bohrok. The Bohrok swarm are a nearly entirely mechanical race, with certain elements prevalent through the whole swarm. Gravity, though, was reserved for one particular individual, Bohrok-Kal. Part of a unique subset of the Bohrok swarm, the Bohrok-Kal, they were distinct characters, able to reason, plan, and even speak, setting them apart from their rank-and-file, automaton-like brothers. Bohrok-Kal was granted an exceptional level of control over gravity, channeling it through a pair of shields it had on its arms. It was pretty clever in its applications, too. It could simply have crushed or orbited or flattened its enemies. Instead, it would just hinder them, or trip them up, or impede them in some way that was pretty debilitating. It seemed to actually enjoy toying with its opponents rather than killing them. Bonus points for that one time it made a flight-capable Toa of air fall out of a tree. Bohrok-Kal was so capable with its own gravity powers that it did manage to make a singularity. Once. As the last thing it ever did. This is why it's a good thing that Toa just can't do that. But now we move on to the beings of shadow. If there is a power in Bionicle, be it a mask power, an elemental power, what have you, you better believe the villainous Makuta can use some aspect of it in some way, shape, or form. And gravity? Oh yeah, they've got gravity. Being one of the staggering 42 powers all Makuta have at their disposal, they can push, pull, fling, flatten, and huck pretty damn well, but not to the extent of an experienced Toa of gravity. Makuta were always meant to be more generalists compared to the experienced specialists that Toa are. They have more at their disposal, but it's not as refined. Although they kinda have a neat workaround for that. Like the other 42 powers all Makuta have, they are able to make a specialist foot soldier of gravity, a Rahkshi. Rahkshi are, well, technically a Rahkshi is a reptilian-looking suit of armor driven by a slug, but both the suit and the slug are an isolated portion of a single Makuta power, in this case, gravity. For color reference, the Krata, the slug that pilots the armor, is blue and silver, and the armor itself is a metallic dark gray and a metallic lemon color. Not quite as cool as purple and black, but it does the trick. So Makuta can create Rahkshi to fulfill a certain task they have in mind. And remember, Toas of gravity can't counter other gravity users. So Gravity Rahkshi can sometimes be sent out to fight Gravity Toa. The Rahkshi have the same level of scope and control as a Toa of gravity. It's not as powerful as, say, Bohrok-Kal, but that's like saying, hey, at least the guy throwing fire at us needs a source of flame. I don't care, he's still throwing fire! Lastly, we have the Skakdi. Skakdi are mean, petty, vindictive lizard people with a great dental plan. They also have inherent elemental properties just like everyone else. But, unlike the Toa or the Makuta, they can't be accessed independently, and that's by design. As kind of a cosmic joke, Skakdi can only use their elemental powers in two ways. The first is with a weapon that's specifically designed to use that power, and they sort of act like a battery for those weapons. They use that weapon to focus their power, and like a Toa, that power is not infinite, so they will quote-unquote run out of ammo eventually. The second, far less likely but far more comical solution, is through cooperation. And in case I didn't mention before, Skakdi are, jerks. They might manage it for roughly 20 minutes, but one will eventually turn on the other, or cower out if things start looking dicey. However, if they can manage it, you are in trouble. You now have not one, but two or more elementally charged murderous lizard men with sharp objects trying to kill you. Oh, and their eyes have superpowers for free. They don't need help for that one. Good luck! Now, we've never actually seen a Skakdi with gravity powers, but I can only imagine they're just as dangerous, if not more so, than other Skakdi. Hell, they might even be seen as more desirable in the gang-like society that the Skakdi live in. I mean, why wouldn't you want to work with a guy who can crush a Toa with a gesture? On the other hand, how do you trust someone with that much power? Gravity isn't just the power to put object A on trajectory B, by the way. That's too limited for Bionicle. We tend to think of gravity as kind of a two-dimensional force. Up and down. That's how we deal with it on the day-to-day. But we're talking about full-on manipulation of gravity here. Gravity users in Bionicle can increase your mass and send things flying at you like an orbit. They can increase the pull of the wall behind you and send you slamming into it. They can change the direction of that wall and walk up a sheer surface, or upside down if they want to. Or, hell, if they try hard enough, they can fly for a limited amount of time. This tends to be why Bionicle gravity powers are bonkers. It's also why we really don't get to see anyone play around with it in the limelight. But they are not invincible by any stretch. In fact, we do know of a couple of gravity characters who are dead, proving that it's not the power you have, but how well you can use it. Thank you for tuning into this heavy episode of Beef Snake Nerdcast. I've been Bolter, your lighthearted host. You can orbit me on social media, or slam that bell for more episodes that are a little less dense. Tune in next time when I talk about the Decepticons from Transformers Generation 1. Till then, may the Great Spirit protect you.